This is Shan Chowdhury. He is running for Congress in New York 5 against one of the most corrupt members of Congress, Gregory Meeks. But we don't want him in. We're going to talk about Shan. So Shan's been endorsed by Brand New Congress, NASA, DSA, and many other organizations, and we want him to hopefully get in. I know absentee ballots, Shan, have been out for a couple of days now. The election's on June 23rd in New York. So, Shan, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to getting this chat rolling.
All right, so let's get into the thick of things. For people that don't know you, Shan, can you tell the viewers a little bit about you and growing up and, you know, why you want to fight for New York 5 and why you're in the fight for the progressive movement?
Absolutely. So, so I'm running in New York 5, which is a working class district. It encompasses the greater parts of Jamaica, Queens, the Rockaways, and parts of Nassau County, which include Elmont Valley Stream. It's a majority minority district, so we most of our demographics include African Americans, South Asians, and Latinos. And I'm someone who is a product of public housing and public education. So because I'm a product of that, I want to champion working class rights. I want to champion for working class representation. And with 20 years, the same representation in New York 5, it's only been the big corporations, Wall Street donors who've been benefiting off of legislation in DC, and not the folks that live on Jamaica Avenue or Merrick Boulevard, Liberty Avenue. And, you know, my parents immigrated here from Bangladesh more than 30 years ago, shortly after the Liberation War. And, you know, they came here with the idea of, really achieving the American dream of having equity and equality. And what we faced instead was Islamophobia. We faced housing insecurity due to the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. We lost our home to foreclosure. So we experienced firsthand what that was like. So, you know, that really kind of left me with not a lot of options. Growing up poor, I didn't have a lot of options. I either could, my only option was to either enlist in the military, which I ended up doing because we needed money. I'm the eldest of 3. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps shortly after high school. And, you know, we needed housing, we needed education, we needed healthcare, and that's what the military provided. So essentially, you know, during my time in, I was a part of this military industrial complex, which, you know, goes into more of the foreign affairs aspect. But I wanted to leave that, and really, when Trump kind of rolled along, I figured, all right, I could either continue to be cynical about the system that we're fighting, or I could do something about it. So after leaving the military, I got my degree in sociology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, which is in Manhattan, New York. I went on to intern and work in the New York State Assembly as a legislative intern. And then I became a campaign staffer for AOC in 2018. And all those experiences kind of led me to this point, really understanding the fact that in order for us to really drive this progressive agenda, we need more folks to run for office. You know, we can't just put it on the shoulders of 4 members of the squad who are, you know, just a small group out of 435 members of Congress. We can't get anything done that way, right? So we need folks who have lived experiences of everything we're trying to implement to be in office. You know, we just hold troops of power. So that's essentially why I'm running. So I'm hoping that, you know, with less than a month out, that we can really win this thing.
So when you are talking to voters, and even for yourself, what are the most important issues you're hearing from voters and to you in general also?
Yeah, you know, I think that in the leftist space, our campaign is so diverse. We're an interracial campaign, and those unique experiences have really led us to really bring in our progressive circles and really bring it in conversation with race, you know. And because we're representing a majority minority district, a lot of our constituents are really concerned about the racial wealth gap. Talking about UBI, it's really, really popular because we're seeing, even now with the coronavirus pandemic, that when we continuously have the big banks bailed out, corporations bailed out, there's no safety net, right, for working class people. So yeah, having Medicare for all is great. These are things that we were fighting for before all this happened, right? Medicare for all, universal basic income, universal paid sick leave. So now to really, go, and these are just like basic necessities. So now it's talking about how can we make sure that in long term, if, God forbid anything like this happens again, that the working families are protected, that we don't have to worry about paying rent. We don't have to worry about not being able to get treatment. And I think that having universal basic income could really alleviate a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the pressure that working families do face over this time.
What is your take on racism in America and how it's really boiling over right now?
Yeah, first thing I want to say is I want to give my outpour condolences to George Floyd's family and all the people who had to even witness that, and folks who are organizing and are really hitting those streets out there in Minneapolis. Keep doing the work. We have every right to be angry during this time, because time and time again, Black lives haven't mattered, and we need to make it matter. It's not enough just to give condolences. It's not enough, to fire police officers. That doesn't do justice. We have a real race problem in this country, and both Democrats and Republicans do a poor job at it, a poor job at addressing it. The way I see it is that we have two right-wing parties. We have Republicans and then we have liberals, who, in that instance in Central Park, ironically enough, that woman, she was a liberal, and I think that it really tells the context of how even white liberals feel about Black Americans and other people of color in this country. They only want to weaponize identity politics when it's convenient for them, and the moment it's inconvenient, then we are seeing dead bodies on the floor, and it's horrific. So for me, I want to be the biggest advocate for racial justice as a member of Congress. That is like one of my biggest priorities. As someone who had to endure stop and frisk, as someone, I was a 17-year-old Muslim boy having to go through that era, and having to really kind of relive those moments when Bloomberg ran for president, and it really opened up a lot of wounds. And I think that Democrats need to have a better understanding of race relations, but also trying to address traumatization that this country has faced for so long. I'm someone who wants to demilitarize the police. I want to decriminalize poverty. I want to abolish the prison industrial complex. We're seeing that, and I think that there should be a level of accountability to folks, especially folks who do cause serious harm. But I don't think that long-term prison sentences are the way to do it, because at the end of the day, as long as that prison industrial complex is there, it's going to target majority of minorities. It's going to target the Black community. It's going to target the LGBT community. It's going to always target marginalized people as long if it's there. So again, firing cops, it's not enough for me. And I really want to see real justice, and part of it has to do with having real conversations about race relations. We do not have that enough in this country.
If you get into Congress as being a veteran, what would you do to kind of get rid of that hold on congressmen and women from the military industrial complex?
Yeah, first things first, I'm not taking any zero money from any of these, manufacturers of weapons, like Lockheed Martin, Boeing Company, you name them. And I can't do it alone. We need more progressive veterans to also be running for office. I've worked with About Face. I have a lot of progressive organizers, veteran organizers, who are really trying to put on the platform, really create a space for veterans to be a part of, because I think that when a lot of folks who think of veterans, they think of holding assault rifles and being white nationalists. So there's that stereotype, right? So even when I stepped into progressive circles, I think a lot of people were kind of like surprised seeing, wow, veteran, talking about all these, these issues that matter to them. So for me, as someone who is also a veteran, progressive veteran, I want to be able to help create that space for more progressive veterans to be a part of. So that way we could really, have serious conversation, but also dismantle this military-industrial complex. I'm someone who wants to fight for Palestinian rights. I do want to destabilize all the bases throughout the world, because we are the biggest murderers and also the biggest, we're complicit in mass genocide that we've seen throughout the world. We're complicit in the destabilization of Central and South America. So for me, it's like, we need progressive veterans to really talk about these issues without taking money from manufacturers, these weapon manufacturers that do have a big placehold in our politics.
How has the pandemic really affected your campaign and really getting donations and getting to the people that don't know you as a first-time candidate?
Yeah, I mean, the only hurdle that we've really encountered is just not having that face-to-face interaction with voters. But, what's so great about being an organizer first is really knowing how to really get around it, this situation, because, as soon as this pandemic broke out, we suspended our petition period right away just to keep everyone safe. And we figured that, and we had a deep intuition that things were going to change, and we need to completely change our campaign into a mutual aid effort. And that's exactly what we did, because we are all organizers at heart. So what we did was turn our campaign. We were one of the first campaigns to do so, was making sure that we did wellness checks on our constituents. We made sure that if folks needed groceries or other essential items, that they could request it from our website, and we bring to them with no cost whatsoever. So we've been able to help our constituents, something that our government should be doing, something that our government should be doing right away. As a campaign, we did that. And we've been able to get donations. We turned all of our donations for March and April to COVID relief efforts. So,
Wow.
people have been inspired by that. And I think that that's just a testament of just organizers really bringing the community together. In the absence of government, that's when community organizers step in and do the groundwork.
What is your opinion on New York and Governor Cuomo and how they handled the pandemic as being there?
Yeah, I think someone like what Governor Cuomo is, he pretty much threw a smoke screen and was very opportunistic at the time. When anyone's competence, if you put them against Trump, any politician is competent against Trump. So having someone like Cuomo really having these daily press conferences, really trying to boost up his ego, it doesn't really. I think he's really trying to throw a smoke screen as to what's going on the ground. We have a lot of racial bias going on when it comes to, we're seeing it, police arrest. We're seeing how when police are patrolling communities of color, people who may not be wearing masks are being arrested and being mistreated. Whereas we have folks out in, in probably like Williamsburg, Brooklyn, or Upper East Side, hanging out, majority white people, and they're being treated, like first-class citizens. And on top of that, Governor Cuomo did cut millions of, I believe, this is a figure on top of my head, I believe it's $10 million. He cut $10 million from hospitals, hospitals that needed these fundings for PPE, for more equipment that they needed to, to be resourced with. Our own prison industrial complex here in New York State, where we have Rikers Island, we have the Queens Detention Facility, which is 10 minutes away from where I live. These folks were not released, and majority of I think over 70% of the prison population right now have tested positive for COVID. So we're seeing that aspect. We're seeing how the fight for canceling rent is not happening when no one right now is able to pay rent. And I think that is just, he's trying to really put a divide between his real estate donors and the corrupt landlords who are really trying to exploit their tenants right now. But again, how can anyone expect tenants to pay the rent when there's no income to begin with? So I think that I think he's been given too much credit, and a lot of it has to do with corporate media, the corporate liberal media, a lot of it. And I think that a friend of mine, we were talking about this earlier, how I think that on the surface, people know that the media does drive narratives, but I don't think we really understand how much it drives it. And I think the media has put Governor Cuomo on a pedestal, but he's not the one that made the difference. It's just people who are knowledgeable enough to understand that how serious this pandemic is have taken the cautious approaches of wearing the mask, of keeping social distancing. It's us, that really kept everyone safe. It's not the governor, it's us.
Shan Chowdhury here. He's running for House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress, District 5 in New York City. Ballots come out. They're already out, I should say, and the voting is on June 23rd. Where do you feel progressives go from here? We saw the Bernie Sanders movement. The campaign is pretty much over with Joe Biden on his way to victory. With that, we see a lot of progressives such as yourself running all over the country. But, a lot of people do look to leaders like Bernie Sanders, like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and the list goes on and on as the progressives in Congress. With that being said, obviously Bernie's older. Where do you feel progressives do go from here? Do they look to somebody that's such as yourself, Lauren Ashcraft, and all the other squad people, or do they look to more so themselves? And Bernie talked about not me, us. We need to get out into the streets. We can't, look at Bernie Sanders as a superhero. It depends on us getting out, fighting for our rights, fighting against the military-industrial complex, fighting against, these white liberals that keep pushing the same incremental change throughout, year after year. So do you feel like we should look up to people or look into this movement and get out and get into the streets and fight for our rights ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. The not me, us movement, that's what it's about. It's about all of us. And, we look at politics, we look at organizing, the movement in itself, they're parallel. We can't have one without the other because we know it's going to go hand in hand. So there's always going to be, and for all the viewers out there, never doubt the progressive candidates. There's so many great candidates running throughout the country. There's always a hidden gem. There's always a hidden gem. So support your progressive candidates, your local candidates, even at the local city level. Support those candidates because they're coming from our community. They're coming from our movement. We should get behind them, and we should also continue building dual power. The way I see electoral politics is not the end of all of making sure that everything that we need is put on the table. We do need to work with grassroots organizers like our endorsers, such as Nassau DSA, Brand New Congress, Muslim for Progress, because they're the ones that have been doing the work for a very, very long time. They're not interested in running for office, and maybe a couple of them are, but they're really about pushing the working class agenda forward. And we do need grassroots candidates to really help amplify that. So we should continue to work at grassroots organizers and make sure that when we go to office, it's just not us as a candidate, but we're bringing the whole movement with us. And that's what it's about.
Shan, you're amazing. I really appreciate the time today. Where can voters and viewers find more about you? We need to get this guy in on June 23rd. So if you could just tell the voters and the viewers where they can find more about you, help you out, donate, volunteer, whatever it may be.
Yeah, so for more information about our campaign, you can visit our website at www.shan2020.com, or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Shaniyat2020. We're pretty vocal there, so we have less than 26 days now up until the primary day. So every dollar counts because the more money that we are able to allocate to voter outreach, the greater chances of us of winning are likely. And we're feeling really good right now, but we do still need that money to come in. So please help us out.
Shan Chowdhury, thanks so much for your time. He's running for New York 5th in Congress. Thanks so much.